Welcome, weary wanderers. Welcome to the Castle of Contemplation, the Palace of Programming, the Cottage of Canon. Welcome to Omnerd. Come and join us for this discussion. Today, I'd like to consider how the 7th season of The Flash could have been more enjoyable. I'll have another video later on that'll discuss more in depth where I think the show is weakest and the problems I had with it. And if you haven't seen the 7th season of Flash, there will be some spoilers, probably just mild, but just want to let you know. But now, let's get right into it. So, one moment in about the 5th episode, there would have been a perfect focus for the rest of the season. It was just after Barry and Iris had revived the Speed Force, I think during or just before the end credits scene, where we saw a storm of lightning over Star Labs that ended up shadowing the birth of the Sage Force, Still Force, and Strength Force. It reminded me of a moment in the Flash Rebirth comic that had similar storms. In that comic, if you haven't read it, a barrage of Speed Force storms ravaged the city and caused multiple people to gain super speed. So this was also the arc that G-Speed was first introduced in the comics, as far as I know. When I saw a similar scene in the show, I was really excited to think that I knew what would happen next and to see how close it would have lined up with the comics. And I was pretty disappointed when I found that they took the direction that they did with the Forces, which I didn't feel was done very well, especially with Nora. It's like, first she's begging Barry for help and wanting to get close to him, and then it's, "You betrayed me, Barry," and then she wants to kill him, and then all of a sudden she's back on his side. It just, it wasn't very well implemented. So yeah. And given that the final villain of the series was G-Speed, was August, it would have been more appropriate, I think, to implement the Speed Force storms as the focusing drive of the plot, rather than going with, well, the Forces. And August's goal in the 3 or so episodes he did appear in the season was to gain organic speed, rather than relying on the Speed Force drug he was taking. August originating a few decades in the future didn't have to be an obstacle in implementing this either. A direction they could have taken was having him travel to the past after learning in his time about the new speedsters that were born in 2021 due to the Speed Force storms. He could have learned this in the Flash Museum, and he could have traveled back to hunt each of the speedsters one by one to absorb their speed for himself in order to gain organic speed. This also would have left an opening for Barry to have his usual "I wasn't fast enough" angst that they love forcing him to revisit, while having the benefit of a more cohesive plot. And instead of a villain of the week, they could have Barry focus on the different speedsters causing trouble. It'd be like a new speedster of the week, and some of them could become minor antagonists, like petty crime and whatnot, or it could just see the episode focusing on Barry helping them deal with their new powers and learn how to be better speedsters. And they could have done a villain of the week format with this, and have Barry either have to let his students take on the villains themselves, or guide them through the combat. Would have given them an opportunity to introduce some more speedsters from the comics. I know that I can't remember her name, but there was at least one that became at least stayed past that saga in the comics. I think she wore a purple suit, but I can't remember exactly. And I also think it would have been more cohesively implemented than what they did with Impulse. And with Impulse, I felt him needlessly tacked on at the end, and his costume was really irritating to me. It was too shiny. The silver looked like they used maybe some kind of lycra or latex. It's probably not the material they used, but it was just a very shiny material. Caught a lot of glare, and I didn't find it a visually appealing costume. I would have found it more tolerable if they'd used silver and red leather. That would have hopefully decreased the glare from his costume and made it look a bit more appealing. And in some iterations of Impulse that I've seen, he's had red hair in the comics, at least in like one comic, I think. And I can't help noticing that that CW and followed the typical Hollywood trend recently of taking a red-haired character from the comics and using a black actor for the movie or television adaptation. I don't care that they used a black actor. I don't have a problem with that at all. What I have a problem with is that they took a redhead from the comics and in their movie or television adaptation, they did not use a red-haired actor. And there are black actors that are naturally red-headed. Or at least there are black people that are naturally red-headed. So I think they could have found a red-headed actor for, like, Iris was a redhead in the comics. And being a redhead myself, I can't stand seeing the lack of redheads in movies and television, especially when it seems that they're deliberately omitting redhead characters when they adapt a comic or book into film. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it, and I need it to stop. Like, if you want to replace a hair color in movies, how about blondes? There are lots of blondes. Get rid of the blondes. Save the redheads. Come on. So, my next big problem that I think would have made the show more enjoyable is if they'd fixed the final scene, or if they'd done it differently with the final scene, or the final big fight scene between Barry, G-Speed, and another speedster. They generated these lightning blades to fight with in a knockoff, off-brand lightsaber duel, and none of these speedsters have previously exhibited the level of electrokinesis that would be required for generating a condensed blade of electricity. And not to mention the choreography for the fight was awful. It was very lackluster. 5-year-olds flailing around with sticks in playing sword fighting with each other had more visual appeal than what those three were doing. And when I watch The Flash fight a speedster, I want to see them fighting at high speed, racing through the city, trying to destroy each other. A good example of when Barry's fight between a speedster was done properly, I think, was in either season 1 or 2, maybe 3, when Flash was fighting either himself. Yeah, it was either 2 or 3. Was either fighting himself, his angsty villainous self with delusions of grandeur, or with Zoom. They were fighting in an alley, running up the wall and throwing at each other while leaping from terrace to wall. It was so cool to watch, and they properly utilized slow motion for the fight. It really looked cool. And even just the fight between Barry and another speedster earlier in the season was better than what we saw in the finale. And especially with the surprise of the identity of the speedster that helped Barry at the end, it would have been incredible to see a high-speed fight with similarities to the last confrontation of Captain America: Civil War between Stark, Bucky, and Steve. Think the speedster that helped Barry knew all of Barry's moves, and Barry, we can assume, knew a good portion of his allies' moves as well, likely deigning to study him and them off camera through video in a way to prepare for meeting him again. So we can assume there would at least be some degree of synergy between the two that, if properly utilized, would have provided a visually impressive fight scene that would have been really exciting to watch. I was disappointed that they discounted that in favor of a pathetic parody of a lightsaber duel, and it made for an anticlimactic final battle. Well, weary wanderers, that's all for today. I hope your little reprieve in my abode has proven restful for you, and if you ever find my door again, feel free to stop by. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more nerdy content on Omnerd. But until then, ut lux vestra numquam minware.